Good morning, Craig. Picken, welcome to $1 Million Career. How are you today?
Rob, what is going on? I'm good.
Well, it was supposed to rain for 5 straight days, and it only rained for like 20 minutes on Thursday, and it rained for maybe 10 minutes yesterday. So it's all good. Bad news is been outside working on gardening for the last 4 days. I'm tired. I need a rest.
Yeah, I had to fly to LA and back for 24 hours, not even 24 hours in LA.
Wow.
So travel across the country.
You need some sleep, man.
3,000 miles there for a 3-hour meeting and 3,000 miles home. And
Wow.
there you go. So it's all good. Now weekend's here. It's what, 14th of May, 15th of May.
Good.
And
Good,
yeah, life is good. No complaints. Business is crazy.
good. I know business is, I've got business that I can't even get to. You know, I've got really good clients, and I put my recruiting team on that, you know.
Yep.
But you know, the people that call me and they want to search for, you know, 20%, or they want to like outrageous
Yep.
guarantee or whatever, I just tell them sorry, but
Yep.
can't help you, you know.
There's a
Can't
lot
help
of
you.
power. There's a lot of power in just saying no. And it's, no. You know, that's the
Sorry.
problem is a lot of people, they don't negotiate on their own businesses, but they expect you to do, you too. And the answer is, like, today it's, there's 5 jobs for every person out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
So,
and finding great people is it's just a challenge in this environment. So
yeah.
we'll talk
And
about
for
that
those
later.
people that we have placed, you know, we work with people and we do some coaching on how to negotiate a raise. So the topic I want to talk about today is continuing this series of 3 reasons, 3 ways to negotiate your next raise. So
Love it.
yeah, so I mean, I'm thinking of 3 main points. I want to get your counterpoints as always. You know, number 1, there's a lot more than just base salary. Always think of additional sorts of compensation like bonuses and commissions and qualitative incentives.
Vacation.
Number 2, have your mutually agreeable benchmarks and metrics so that when you go in your performance review, you can just review that. It becomes a matter of fact discussion, you know.
Yep.
Number 3, don't be afraid to take on more responsibility. So I always counsel my people, you know, hey, go into your annual review. If you think you could add more value in a different area, tell your supervisor, hey, boss, you know, I can take on a little bit more sales responsibility, or I could take on a little bit more service responsibility. So those are the 3 ways. And I'd like to get your thoughts on it as usual. Craig, what do you think, man?
Well, look, so the dumbest thing I ever read was incredible, it was crazy because Susie Welch, Jack Welch's, GE, Jack Welch's wife,
Okay.
who was a big management consultant. And she wrote this thing. It was around Christmas several years ago. And she writes, ask boss Santa or Santa boss or whatever for a raise. I'm like, man, that is just what a weak comment that was. Go ask Santa Claus for a raise. Well, your boss ain't Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And don't ask him for anything. I think it all starts January, the December 31st raise starts on January 1. And it starts on understanding your value to the organization, understanding your achievements every day, understanding what you got every day, what you did every day, how much money you've made for the company, how much money you've saved for the company, how many customer service complaints you positively answered, whatever the metrics are that you're graded against.
Right.
Every day,
Yeah.
you know what you accomplished, so that you could sit there and say, at the end of this week, I sold 7 widgets. I placated 10 angry customers and got them happy without giving away the farm. I did whatever it is you're benched at. Every week you should have a rolling thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we talked about on a previous podcast earlier this year that back when I was a youngster, back in the 1980s, I used to keep 3 by 5 cards in my top desk drawer. And whenever I would do something really good, I'd make a note of it.
Yeah.
The only thing I forgot to do is what you said. It's important, I think, to know what's expected of you, know what the metrics are, know what the benchmarks are. And then as you hit those benchmarks and metrics, you make a note of that. And then at the end of the year, you got a shoebox full of stuff and you're just basically, hey, over the past year, I did, 63 times I did this, or, I rescued 13 clients. I closed 3 deals in that new market area that we were expanding into or whatever, so I totally agree with that. You've got to focus on benchmarks and metrics, and you got to know what the path forward is. Like, where does your boss want you to go? Where can you add the most value? So you have to ask that question, listen very carefully, and mutually agree upon that's what one of the benchmarks is going to be.
Yeah, but yes, and you just hit a couple key points there. Know what your boss expects of you, mutually agree to the benchmarks, and understand the path forward. Now, there's a lot of people out there. If you go, what does your boss expect of you? You shrug your shoulder. They shrug their shoulders and goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people, worried about a raise is the least thing. Is the least important thing in your life. What you need to be doing is finding a different job or finding a different boss.
Exactly.
Because you're going to drown. You're just going to drown there. You're going to sit in the quicksand of nothingness. And then, a couple of years is going to go by and you're like, what did I do? You're going to go, whoa, nothing. You're stuck.
Yeah. I was talking before we came on air about Susie. So I did a blog in December 14th, 2014 about this woman, and I'll call her Susie, as I did in the blog. And I placed her with a company, a CSR, a young CSR with very little experience, a couple years out of college, but she was smart.
Right.
And I remember she was making, I actually took some notes here. She was making $41,750 in 2008. By the time I wrote this blog in 2014, by calling me once a year, about a month or two before her salary review, I'd coach her to tell her about the metrics, the benchmarks, and after she got the process down, she started doing this. In 2014, she was up to $85,100. Okay, so in preparation for this show, I called her on Friday, just out of curiosity. I had not been in contact with Susan, but she had learned how to get this pay raise every year by being prepared for the performance review and keeping track of metrics and making sure they're mutually agreeable and asking for bonuses. I mean, she had her boss trained like a dog. Here's what she's making now. Now get this. She was making $41,000 in 2008 as an insurance person, which traditionally get 3% raises. She should have been making by now, maybe 80,000. Yeah. $146,510. She's like in the top 2%. And I talked to her on Friday and she goes, Rob, it's been a long time. And we talked about how she's still using these techniques on how to get a raise every year. Benchmarks, metrics, taking more responsibility, asking for bonuses. Her favorite thing is, what can I do in the next year to really make you look great? And the boss tells her every year, hey, Susie, if you can do this, I'm going to give you that bonus again. Every year she knocks out of the park because she's focused on it. Every day she comes to work thinking about that one thing. Yeah. So if Susie can do it, anybody can do it.
No, I totally agree. I had a conversation with a guy on Friday, and the one thing that, here's a big thing for me with salespeople. They worry. I know I've got the wrong salesperson when they worry about their base.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, hey, what's the base? Pick a number. Base 50 grand, but on the target earnings are 400,000. And if you're not making 400,000, there's probably a different conversation to be had. Like, you're probably not cutting it.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they go, well, do you think they can raise the base? It's like, what? It's a $400,000 job.
Exactly right.
Raise the base. You're not working for your base out there. I mean,
The base is irrelevant.
and I'm like the worst person to have that conversation with. I haven't had a base salary since 2002. I mean, I'm like, yeah, what do you mean you want? What do you want? Okay, it's 50. What do you need? 60? Why? You can't live on 60 grand either.
Yeah.
So, it's
You want incentives, man.
but I had this conversation with a guy on Friday, as a matter of fact. And it was a great conversation. This guy is a rock star. I mean, you talk about, the future Mick Jagger of the industry. This is it.
Yeah.
He says, hey, look, he goes, I'm realizing something that I'm a little underpaid. I'm like, well, what'd they pay you? He's like, my base is upper ones. I got a nice bonus. I'm like, well, all right. So you're making, over 300 a year. Nothing wrong with that. He goes, yeah, but here's what I did for the company. And he's added hundreds of millions of dollars in value. I mean, it's like, he's just phenomenal. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
Smart. And I said, all right. He's like, so I had a chat with my boss, and then I said, okay, so here's what you need to do. And ultimately comes out to, here's where the business is today. Just say it's 10 million round numbers. You want it at 15 million by the end of next year. So you want 50% growth. I want a defined chunk of that growth. If we don't get there, I don't get it. But if we do get there,
Right.
you don't care that the bonus you pay me
Yeah.
is absolutely obscene.
Exactly
I
right.
go, that's the conversation. It's called
Absolutely.
skin in the game.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, I call that the personalization of goal making.
Mhm.
You make it personal. Tell me what specifically I got to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be sales. It could be like retention. We got this big, troublesome insurance client out there, and a lot of other companies are after them. We're doing a bad job. If I can rescue this company plus grow their top line commissions by 10%, hey, how much is that worth to the company? Well, a lot. Well, how about paying me 10,000 if I could pull that off? Okay, yeah, sure. But which leads to my next point. Okay, when you have these conversations and your boss agrees to some of these things we're talking about, like mutually agreeable goals and benchmarks, you got to get that in writing, man.
Yeah.
You better get that in writing. Do not leave your annual review meeting with just an oral agreement.
Yeah.
You get your boss to commit to putting that in writing.
Yep.
Okay, we just agreed if I can do this, this, and this, I'm going to get X. Can I have that in writing within 10 days?
Yeah.
He's not going to say no. He's going to say, yeah, sure. But you got to ask him, because if you don't, you're never going to get it in writing. I guarantee you.
Well, this is this is the insanity that's happening now, is that you got companies, and this is for the bosses out there listening. You look at your team and you figure out, okay, who's just an employee, who, if they, I'm paying them, an hourly, I'm paying them hourly, or I'm paying them, 50, 60, 70, 80 a year to get stuff done. Who's just an employee? And if they left tomorrow, I'll just replace them with the same thing. And it's kind of like next, right? And who are the people in my organization that if they were to leave, it would cost me a year's salary to get them back? And you're like, all right, if those are the stars of your organization, and if they were to leave, it would hurt. You damn sure better figure out what you need to do to be, convincing them to stick around. Don't be stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. And that's where the challenge is right now. Is a lot of companies.
A lot of people are just what we called in the military CFs.
Yep.
CFs. I'll give you a clue what that means for people who don't know what that means. C stands for cheap. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you what the F stands.
Yeah. No.
All right.
I hear you.
There's a lot of CFs out there, man. I keep telling them, forget about the nickels and dimes like you. You got a superstar, man. Incentivize them. So
yeah. I mean, I've seen, that's the whole thing. It's like, hey, look, if you put, look, I've negotiated stuff out there for small companies, and the person says, I can double your business. But if I double your business and double your EBITDA,
Yeah,
I want 10%
exactly.
of the, yeah. So if I increase the business value by $10 million, I want $1 million.
Exactly right.
Okay, there you go. Do it.
I mean, he's thinking like an owner. That sort of behavior should be rewarded, you know.
Yes.
Another tactical thing. I'll just throw some tactical things that people can use, you know. Another one is it's never too late to ask for an informal review.
Mhm.
So what if your review is on December 31st every year or December 15th?
Mhm.
Why not go in there in June or July and ask your boss, hey boss, you know, can I grab you for 45 minutes to an hour? I want to talk to you about my progress.
Yeah.
The guy would be like, yeah, sure, come on
Yeah.
in. What's he going to say? No. And you know what? Here's the thing. If the guy says, no, I don't have time, or that's inappropriate, wait till December, that's when you call you or me. I need to get out of this company.
Yeah.
So you have to be continually testing people too.
Yeah.
I tell people, you have to test your boss, man. You cannot, you know, you are the CEO of your career. You have to test people. The best way to test a boss or a company is to ask for an informal performance review. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And then you go in there and maybe you reset your, you know, mutually agreeable goals and metrics, but you're in there, you're in the fight, man. You're not, you got to get out of the stands and get in the arena, get in the fight and be proactive.
I do it all the time as an executive recruiter. I talk to my clients. I'm in a search. Some of these searches they're not 5-day events. They're 4 months.
I know. Yeah.
And you're looking at me and you're like, hey, look, after like 3 weeks or a month, you're going, all right, you know, am I meeting your expectation? What are you seeing what you need to see, or where do we need to pivot? What do we need to do differently?
Right.
And so because we are involved in this differently.
Yeah.
And you get that feedback, and eventually it all gets done. But I never want to wait to the end and go, hey, are you guys happy? You know, ultimately, you know, well, it's maybe, you know, I just want to make sure it's.
And how about this, Craig? I'm sure you do this too. All right. Same situation, right? You're a month into a search and maybe you need to refine the skills or experiences or attributes, whatever it is. And you send the email into the client or you call the client.
Yeah.
No answer.
Yeah.
For 2 days, 3 days. You send another email. Is there a problem here?
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're testing the client. If I don't hear from the client within usually a week, okay, you know, people are on vacation, whatever. If I don't hear from for a week, I sent one out this past week. If I don't hear from you by Tuesday, I'll assume you've already found your candidate and you don't need me anymore. So, and that's the last thing I'll send an email, and that search is over at that point, because we've got to continually test our clients too, because the last thing we want to be doing is wasting time.
Yeah.
So that's sort of our equivalent of asking for a, you know, performance review earlier than is expected.
Absolutely. You know, but for the boss, on the flip side of that conversation too, once again, this is for the bosses. If you're not walking out of your office and buying your team, somebody on your team lunch once a week, or saying, let's just go get a cup of coffee. Hey, come on, let's go get a cup of coffee down at the cafeteria, or let's just go across the street to Starbucks, grab some coffee. And and you're not mentoring them, and you're not talking to them on a personal level about their career, or, hey, how are you feeling about things? How are you feeling about my leadership, or what would you like to see different in the organization? You know, and you have very proactive conversations. You're a crappy boss.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely adamant about that. If you're sitting in your office, and I've seen it happen where they just sit in their office with their door closed and make everybody mental because they don't converse. And the only time you hear from them is, hey, that was all screwed up, or, whatever. You're just a crappy boss.
Yeah.
And you need some leadership training.
We had a guy in a former corporate company that I worked with going back in the 1980s. I'll tell you what, this guy was out of, right out of Hollywood, blue suit, white tie, white starched shirt, red tie, hair combed, everything, fresh sunburn. You go into his office, the corner office, he was like senior VP or something, and closed the door, and he wouldn't even put the fluorescent lights on his office. He'd have like a lamp
Yep.
And he had a pinky ring. I think he was from Yale or someplace. I mean, this guy was out of like Casting Central,
Yep.
and he never you couldn't get a word in with this guy. The guy's door was closed, and you open up the door and peek in. The guy would kind of glare at you across his desk, and he was there about a year, and then one day he was gone.
It's like, why don't you just, it's like, yeah, it's like, yo, Joe, why don't you just put the do not disturb sign on your door? From the time you walk in to the time you walk out, it's like the Hotel Joe. You just, put it on your door, and but that's the whole thing, is that, bosses, they got to get out of their own head, and it's hard. I mean, look, business is hard. And it's about, if you want to be a people leader, it's get off your butt. You take people to lunch, you take them to coffee, and you go, hey, what's going on with you? What's happening with your family? Here's what you're doing. Here's what I think you're missing. Here's what I can be better. It's never a smackdown. It's like, hey, look, I value you, but I want to see something else.
Here's something else tactically that you can do. I mean, this may sound a little bit off the wall, but I'm going to throw it out there only because I've got this guy. I'm not going to give his last name. His first name is Mike. He's a insurance guy that I've known for since I started my business in 2003. And this guy, he was very introverted, right? But he was really, I mean, he's really, really good at what he does, and he's up at the EVP level now. But he's another guy. Started out as like an account manager, CSR. This guy read one of my blogs, and he would call me up before his performance review, and he would want to do role playing with me. I played his boss.
All right.
And he was himself. And he would ask for the raise and to all the things we're talking about, mutual agreeable benchmarks and how am I doing? If I could do one thing and, in 6 months, could I get a bonus and more responsibility, the whole thing. He would go through this with me and I'd play his boss. And after like 45 minutes of this, which was a lot of fun, by the way, the guy was fluent in the whole thing. And we do it again and do it again until he had it. And man, this guy would go in. I'd have this guy so excited. He would go into his performance review and he'd always come out of it saying, Rob, it was unbelievable. The fucking guy, the guy couldn't believe it was me. He said, wow, it was great. And the guy always got what he wanted.
Love
it. And actually, his boss was so impressed, he started moving him into sales. Because he communicated. It was just because he rehearsed it.
Yeah.
And it was not only that he went in there trying to be somebody he wasn't, like play acting.
Yeah.
It just got him fluent with everything that he wanted to talk about. It got him fluent with his numbers, with his benchmarks. He didn't have to look at a piece of paper. He was like locked and loaded, man. And that's how you want to treat your review. When you want to go in and ask for that big raise, you got to be prepared, man. I mean, it's a big thing. It's almost like rehearsing for a bit part in a movie or a play. I mean, you have to be prepared because, and you tell me if I'm wrong, how many bosses really, really prepare for that review where a raise is going to be talked about? None. They walk in there and Sally, their secretary, buzzes their desk and says, Mr. Johnson, Craig Picken's here for his annual review for his rate. Oh shit. Okay. He reaches into your file. Oh, he's getting 3.4%. Hey, congratulations. You did a great job. And, does all this. I get 3.4%. I got a call, Craig. It was great seeing you. See you next year. That's how it really goes. Right.
Yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much it. They have no idea. And it's,
you're too good for that, man.
There's so much, look, at the end of the day, it's business is a big ocean. And you think about it's people. And when you talk about like a big ocean, you got killer whales, which are the apex predators, and you got minnows, which are just born to be eaten. The goal is to become an apex predator. And the goal is not to let minions stand in the way of your success. And this is a big thing in manufacturing right now, where you've got a lot of companies out there. Well, we'll pay machinists $30 an hour. Well, machinists are all in short supply right now, especially in aerospace. And what do these guys do? They quit. because they can go across the street and they'll go to work for a company. They'll give them $35 an hour.
Right.
And the HR people are like, what do you mean you're quitting? Yeah, it's like, well, I wanted $35 an hour. You told me you were only pay, your company policy is only $30 an hour. Well, you think about, you're taking control of your career.
Yeah.
Means eliminating the people who stand in your way.
Right.
And it's, if HR says, well, you're only good for a 3.4% pay raise, and you're like, you did all this stuff. Well, all right. Polish up my resume, call Rob and Craig.
Here's what the killer is too. So there's a lot of people out there. I would say it's the 80-20 rule, right? So there's 80%, of the people out there, 80% of your colleagues, for anybody out there working in corporate America, 80% of your colleagues are doing the minimum. So when they get the email that says 3.4%, they're probably pretty happy. Hey, shit, I didn't do anything. I'm just going through the motions. During the daytime, I'm doing other stuff on my computer, which I shouldn't be doing. I got a sidekick going, I got a side hustle going at night. So, I mean, most people are okay with that. But if you're listening to this right now, you're probably in that top 20%.
Right.
You're the ones who are getting screwed because you're the one that's getting 3.4%. And you're doing 80% of the work because it's 80-20 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the work. So it's people like our kids, right? They're out there just busting their asses, man.
Yeah.
And then they get to 3.4%.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? That's why you got to speak up.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You remember the comedian George Carlin?
I love that guy.
Yeah, 7 dirty words you can't say on television.
I love that guy.
That guy was funny. That guy was funny.
He was.
But he had a great quote, which kind of went something like this. He goes, most people do just enough work to not get fired, and they get paid just enough not to quit.
Exactly.
So there, it's like we used to say in naval aviation, if the minimums weren't good enough, the weathermen, if the minimums weren't good enough, they wouldn't be the minimums, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's what people do. It's like, hey, a lot of people are out there, and it's like, I'll do the minimum, and then we're not talking about, and then there was that CEO recently who fired 900 people on Zoom.
That's a great story.
And then he got skewered. And the funny thing is, I had absolutely no sympathy for the people that he fired, because they knew exactly, they had the metrics on every one of those people. And they're like, hey, look, we understood that they were working 2 hours a day.
I know.
And collecting 8-hour day paychecks. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I guess the big takeaway here is, after having our discussion, is if you're listening to this, you're probably in the top 5 to 20% of your company.
Correct.
You've got to speak up. You've got to be proactive. You have to be in charge of your career, because if you're not, no one is. And the 3 things, it's not just base salary. Ask for bonuses. Ask for incentive compensation, because you're adding value. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, get those agreed upon benchmarks. Meet with your boss, get those benchmarks in place, those metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing is, and we didn't talk about it all that much, but don't be afraid to take more responsibility. If you've got some stretch in what you're doing, if you're doing all your stuff 8 hours and you're really productive and you're knocking it out in 6, you got maybe 2 extra hours, take on some additional responsibilities. But if you do, make sure you get paid for it in terms of bonus or commissions or something. Yeah.
Well, it's like one of those things where if you see something that's askew, fix it.
Yeah. And make sure they know that you fixed it.
It's kind of like, it's like the piece, if you see something that's askew in your business and you've got a couple extra hours a day or an hour a day or whatever, you fix it. And then then you note it. And then when it comes to pay raise time, you sit there and you throw that down there and go, oh yeah, that big problem that needed fixing, I fixed it. And there you go. It's one more arrow in your quiver.
Yeah, so we talk about our kids once in a while. So my middle son, ex-Green Beret. Mm-hmm. So I guess you're a Green Beret forever, actually. So he works for a defense contractor, and he was coming up on his review. I couldn't believe the preparation he did. It was like 3 pages of like salary surveys, and he kept a list of everything he was doing, and it was just incredible to read this thing. I couldn't believe he did it all on his own. And they were actually in a situation where I think they're letting people go, actually. And he not only got a big raise, but he got a promotion, and he's on a fast track now because people recognize that he's a thinker. He thinks like an owner. He's
Right.
very proactive in what he does. And that is essentially that action that he took to get that raise. It was his first raise, separated him and still separates him from most of his colleagues.
Mhm.
Real simple. I mean, he probably spent a whole weekend doing that, but isn't it worth it? I mean, think about it, 40 hours a week, you got a 30-year career.
He thinks about it. He thinks about it. What's being on. He thinks about the other guy. What's important to the other guy?
Yeah, exactly.
What's important to what's important to somebody else? This is important to me, but what is the other, what does the customer want? The boss is being the customer. What does the boss need? What does the boss need to do for his career to be successful? All right, let's go make him successful. And you talk about, what do bosses do? They go hire people that are smarter than themselves.
Right, exactly.
And then they let them go.
Right.
It's perfect. So yeah, more responsibility is a huge, show you can take on more.
Well, good, man. That's all I got for today. I wanted to thank you again for your guidance and wisdom. You are the best of the best on that aerospace and aviation side. So, Craig, how do people get a hold of you anyways?
They can just call me 910-509-7129 in my office. Email is Craig, CRAIG at northstaresg.com.
And you're very active on LinkedIn too, right?
Oh yeah, LinkedIn.
I see your stuff all the time. People should definitely connect with you.
I get a lot of blogs going, hook up.
I read your stuff. I mean, it's like the Wall Street Journal is one, and Craig Picken's stuff is two.
I read
one
your
and
stuff.
1A. I don't know.
I read your stuff religiously, Rob, and I'm always forwarding it because it is incredibly well written and it's incredibly insightful. And just keep doing it because you're doing value for a lot of people.
Cool, man. All right. Well, we'll see you next week on $1 Million Careers again. And people can reach me at rob@mrfairfax.com. And until next week, stay safe.